Hello, and welcome to another fully live Friday episode of Hacking with Friends. My name is Cody Kinsey. I'm a security researcher at Varonis, and today we have my good friend and fellow co-host, Michael, who, while a cryptozoology expert, also will go with us through the hacking news of the week. And also hello to everybody in the stream. Our Wednesday stream in particular has been very popular lately, and it's been great to see some spillover into the news stream. So if you have been with us on the Wednesday stream, then you know that I ordered a Flipper 1 and FlipperZero. And I was eagerly anticipating it coming in. It got seized by customs in with an entire shipment of like 16,000 of them or something. And then finally, last night, when I realized that it was like 6 degrees outside, I realized that I should check the tracking. And I clicked on it, and it turns out it had been delivered. So I went out in the middle of the night and picked up the coldest Flipper I could have possibly met. It was basically a popsicle, and so much so that there was condensation inside the screen, and I was a little worried that it wouldn't start up. But sure enough, it seems to work just fine. So we're going to go ahead and dedicate the first part of this episode to, as somebody on the last stream suggested, flipping out and taking a look at the FlipperZero. So do we want to try our Flipper cam? We're trying something new on this stream. We're going to try
Flipper cam has been deployed.
Wow. Okay. So this is...
We're flipping out.
Yeah. Okay, all right. So so this is what I got. It's the standard Flipper, plus I also got the Wi-Fi dev board. So let's take a look at that real quick, because the Flipper's obviously exciting, but like, what is this? There we go. So this uses the same underlying microcontroller that we use on our product, the Wi-Fi Nugget, or sorry, the USB Nugget. It's the ESP32S2. And I was really excited to just see like what this is like. And obviously this is very much just like a development board, but this is like the exact same chip. So I'm really excited to see what kind of compatibility there is and exactly what you can do when you plug this into your Flipper. So that is obviously super cool. I haven't really even thought about what I could do with this chip directly yet, but I'm interested to see what type of approach they've taken to integrating this, if there is in fact integration provided. So
did you say that's a 32 or 8266?
ESP32S2, and it should say on the little metal can
it
there.
may not focus.
Yeah, it might not focus, but if I take a look at it, I can see it's a Espressif ESP32S2 Rover.
I would be very excited if this spurred on the development of Wi-Fi hacking with the 32. Just because, there are a lot of limitations, because Espressif got a little upset with people using the 8266 for Wi-Fi hacking, and then they started to make a bunch of restrictions. I know that there were various people looking into getting around those restrictions, but I don't know if any of them have made progress.
Yeah, so that's really cool. And then, all right, let's go on to the main show. So here we have the packaging. It is very nice, very branded, cardboard box, resistant to crushing. That's why we ended up making a 3D printed case for ours. Is because it's so easy to crush the screen. So it looks like they went with like an injection molded case, but then also a good crush proof box that is branded on all sides and has a little bit of flair there. Look at that. All right, so if I take the tape off the bottom and then open this, we can see that inside the first layer, we have a handy sticker, which is going to go on my next nice laptop. I don't feel like this MacBook deserves this sticker, but I'm gonna go ahead and save this for a good one. And then we have some information, a quick start guide. Of course, there's also a website.
We're going to throw that out immediately, of course.
I haven't even glanced at this. I'm just like, as a former operator of many Lego sets, like built like the wrong way, halfway first, I will figure this out myself. So it's just like, you need to install an SD card. And I was like, cool, let's do that. And I tried it, and I absolutely cannot get it to work. But let's get up to that point. Because first it wants you to power it on, update get the micro SD card in there, and then update the firmware. So I've not gotten that far yet, but I was amazed that it was able to actually start last night.
And a bunch of compliance stuff we're obviously going to read.
Yeah. All right. So we have what comes with it, which is a data USB cable. And this is important. And I've considered doing this as well for our product, just because, I even recognize the like Chinese.
That is the exact same cable we use.
Yeah, this is the same one that we use. It's really good, honestly. It's like a pretty good price point. And frankly, like we get so many complaints in our workshop that people's data cables that they brought are broken, but they don't know it. They're like, hey, this thing, your product's broken. And then we just give them one of our cables and suddenly it magically works because instead they actually had a power cable or a data cable that failed at some point and just became a power cable silently. So that's really cool. I'm glad that they have that. All right, so we have this molded cutout foam, which keeps everything secure. And then embedded inside, we have the flipper itself. So there's an easy little spot where I can dig in with my thumb and pull it out, which indicates that they have some good designers working with them. And then away goes the packaging. There doesn't seem to be anything else in here. So that's all we got for that. So then we have the device itself. So in order to power it on, we press this button on the side and it powers up. And the Dolphin hates this SD card. It hates the SD card I put in there. So I'm going to be like, yeah, sure, whatever. I don't care. And then boom, we have access to the menu. So I can scroll through. And it took me a while to figure out how to turn this thing off. So if you decide that you're done playing with your Dolphin, you can hold this button down again, and it'll just complain at you about, for example, the SD card and some other stuff. And like I was like, oh, that's not the way to turn it off. No, just do it again. You know, just keep holding it down. And eventually, if it decides it wants to, see, you'll get the sad Dolphin that's just like, I'll be waiting for you, and it's got a little bit of like senpai energy, like it's like begging a little bit. I'm gonna say right away, I like how submissive this Dolphin is. It doesn't care that I'm turning. It's not angry I'm turning it off. It's just gonna wait for me.
What's the size of the SD card you put in there?
Like 16 gigabytes. It's just so it does warn on the website that it might not like cheap SD cards, and I definitely did not provide the best quality. So this is the problem I'm getting. I can't really figure out how to
yes, Sassy, we do read the chat.
Yeah, we read the chat. All right, here I'm going to go to storage, and I just want to show you how far I've gotten. We're like, all right, let's go ahead and initiate this SD card. So I click on format SD card, and then I try to format it.
Yeah, okay.
Oops. Sorry, I'm working inverted.
You know, we were just getting some suggestions to format it in the settings.
Wait, is it actually formatting?
Yeah, that's what.
No, I went through this process 4 times. Okay, so it was really the demo that needed to happen. Before this, I tried 2 different SD cards, and I went through this exact process multiple times, and it just failed over and over. So hey, everyone, live, we just got that working. So all right, so now we've got an SD card ready, and we can actually start doing some stuff. So let's go ahead and switch over to my screen real quick, and I want to show off the documentation for this.
Do you want the Flipper cam going still?
I mean, not yet. Like, let's go fully over to this one. So this is the website for Flipper Docs. It has all sorts of information about how to get started. It really also walks you through the process of getting the SD card set up. For example, the reason I figured that out was it has very clear steps on what you're supposed to do. Let me enlarge this. To get all the way from just having one brand new to updating the firmware, benchmarking the SD card, and then going through and formatting it. So again, none of this worked for me a couple minutes ago. And in fact, when I inserted the SD card, my Flipper would freeze and glitch out. But it seems like with a couple retries, it was able to overcome. Maybe it's because it was cold, you know? So the next step is going to be like updating the firmware and making sure I have the most recent version very soon. I'm not going to do that live, I don't think. But there's also some cool stuff that it claims to be able to do right out of the box, like NFC, reading NFC cards, reading an emulation of some different things. So I want to see if we can actually do some like reading. I just have a random RFID card here. This is specifically a low frequency rewritable RFID 5-pack tag. So I got these, I think, with like some sort of RFID scanner. So if we do want to go back to the Flipper cam,
Flipper cam enabled. It's time to flip out.
Michael. All right, so here's one that's 125 kilohertz RFID.
Tilt it towards the camera.
All right. And now I can't see it. We're going to try reading. And it's reading. It's got this like very focused look on its face. Like it's really straining. It's feeling uncomfortable. I'm going to hold it close. And again, this could be the complete wrong frequency. And somebody in the chat might also tell me that, hey, this is the wrong type of card. But either way,
where's
again,
the antenna on that?
Who knows? I'm just sweeping it all over and seeing if it can read. It paused for a second, and that made me think that like it was able to like see something. But yeah, it looks like this is probably the wrong frequency for this particular setting. Again, not very scientific. I'm just kind of trying to like randomly like try some of these features. NFC, read card. All right, let's try it again. Detecting. Oops.
This looks like an antenna over here, but that's probably the IR port, I think.
Oh, it's got all sorts of antennas on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so again, I have performed I'm just getting this out of the box and I'm seeing if it's simple enough to just kind of like try some random cards. Of course, I have a lot more cards than this. This is just the one I happen to pull out. So either way, at least I'm able to get started trying to do these. I see there's GPIO. Yeah, so all right, so it didn't work against my random card that I just found, but hey, that's okay. Yeah, that's okay.
I'm sure we were holding it in the wrong place because NFC needs to be really close.
Oh yeah, and this is for sub-gigahertz frequency, so that's not going to work. But yeah, either way, it seems like it was relatively...
So there's another firmware that we need.
Oh, it doesn't surprise me that like this is not the most recent version of the firmware and doesn't have everything enabled. So I'm going to go ahead and update this. And then I think we're probably going to cover this on its own individual video because frankly, it's such an interesting tool. The animations when it's at a very, very cold temperature are hilariously slow. Like the screen refresh rate like slows down to the point that it kind of glides into each one of the animations. So it's kind of funny like receiving it at such a low temperature and then watching it like freeze and kind of struggle to work. And then today it seems to be working like perfectly fine. And just kind of
I got up this morning and it was literally 7 degrees Fahrenheit. Like that's how cold it is out. And that was in the morning.
Yeah. So it's definitely been a little bit of a strain on this poor little Flipper's ability to deal with the temperature. But yeah, if you have any questions about what you want us to try out, obviously there's lots of different features on this thing, and I'm just unboxing and getting the firmware set up on it. So if you have any opinions on what you would like us to cover, please make sure to leave them in the chat, and we will make sure to cover them in upcoming videos. All right. So also, yeah, we are checking the chat, although typically like we do more of the Q&A on the Wednesdays stream. So if you have a question that doesn't get answered here, make sure to join us on the Hack 5 Wednesday Q&A stream where we're, checking the chat a little bit more often.
I'm going to briefly answer one question. Sassy was asking about what happened to Null Byte. If you go back to last week's Q&A, there's chapters and you can see where we talk about Null Byte.
Null Byte's broke. They were a company we worked for, and I created the Null Byte YouTube channel, and then the company that owns it, Wonder How To, just like didn't do very well after a while, and they haven't known what to do with it for a while. But it turns out that they might be trying to do something about that and like just get the Null Byte YouTube channel sold, perhaps. So if that's possible, then we might actually maybe try to buy it. That'd be kind of cool. I don't know. We're thinking about it. So short term is people who owned it were broke and stopped giving us any money to make episodes and also locked us out of the channel. But long term, we might actually be able to do something about it. So that would be pretty cool.
Are we done with the Flipper cam?
Yeah, we're done with the Flipper cam for now. If somebody has a burning Flipper question, then we can always bring back the
Flipper cam.
All right, so it looks like right now the Flipper is not currently in the store, but I imagine it will be up again soon. They're restocking and dealing with like some of the stuff that's happened, like having half of their PayPal account money get seized. So obviously that's like a pretty big thing to have like half of the income you've made from your orders just suddenly taken up by something like that.
I can start if.
Oh no, I want to go through a couple Twitter things. So Twitter, as you've seen, there's some changes going on at Twitter. So I'd like to go through the Twitter stuff
I haven't
first,
heard about any of that.
just in case Twitter were to go down, maybe. I don't know. So one thing that Michael and I were talking about is, can you explain the Kraken SDR?
Kraken SDR?
Yeah, sure.
Kraken? Yes, I can explain the Kraken SDR. It is got 5 coherent RTL SDRs. That means basically that they're all synchronized in regards to frequency and timing. And what that allows you to do is things like radio direction finding, or in this case, passive radar. Passive radar means you aren't transmitting any radio signals, but you're using a static radio transmission source, such as a FM radio broadcast tower is a very common one. Also, if you have like one of those TV antennas that gets TV, those sorts of things. And these have been around for quite a while. But the Kraken SDR makes it pretty affordable and approachable. We're talking like $300. And these things can detect like the stealthiest aircraft in existence, the B-2 Spirit. So
yeah, so the part that's highlighted about ITAR, so it looks like some of their code was pulled due to ITAR restrictions. Michael, what are ITAR restrictions?
I forget the exact acronym stands for, but basically it's arms treaties. And basically making it originally came out in the Cold War to make sure that Russia didn't gain Western technologies.
Yeah, so it basically limits like the way that certain types of goods are able to be exported. And usually this applies to like conventional technologies like, like printed circuit boards or like things like that, but this also applies to software. Like some types of encryption can be subjected to this sort of thing. And in this case, it looks as though they were concerned about this being used as a way of differentiating between like, it looks like chaff or debris or countermeasure and like ballistic missiles. Was like one of the specific things that was not particularly an application that they wanted this to be widely exported. And then also it looks like the particular bandwidth of radar is also at issue for what was taken down. So obviously this is open source code, and that kind of lends the question, if it is open source code, how is that managed? It looks like an American company, obviously, like is maybe perhaps running the GitHub. So then like having that taken down because they would have to comply with like a request to have it taken down, like is the way that this happened. But in future versions, if they were to host it somewhere else in the world, the question then becomes like, is open source code able to be export controlled?
Well, also what I was going to say along those lines is not that I would ever disagree with military's rationale, but the best way to highlight something is to try to ban it. And then when you try to ban it, everyone's going to be like, oh, this can't be banned. I'm going to repost it in my own repository. And then it's going to spread all over the internet faster than if you try not to suppress it.
It is the best marketing campaign for the for this particular product that I could possibly imagine. Like having it like declared to be such a great product that it's considered to be like a danger to export it, like is an instant campaign for making this anybody's go-to tool to start exploring this sort of stuff. So
chat, does Cody look like Eminem? We have some disagreement in the chat.
I don't find that to be an insult.
Okay.
Like I've heard far worse. So you know,
yeah, there used to be one.
I'm getting if me recovering from like RSV is like the like me also looking like Eminem, like I'm cool with that comparison. All right, so one thing that's really cool is Micropython. So I teach a lot of Python and microcontrollers, and usually I kind of push people towards CircuitPython. And the reason I do that is because there's a great IDE for it. It's supported very well across a lot of different platforms, and it has great documentation. Now, kind of the competitor or like the other alternative to that is Micropython. But Micropython, unlike CircuitPython, which is supported by Adafruit, is a community project. And while some of the documentation is terrifyingly old, it does work really well. And there's a lot of things you can do with it that are very kind of granular and low level that perhaps CircuitPython hasn't implemented yet. Now, what's really cool about this is somebody at Arduino was convinced that this is a language that's worth supporting on Arduino IDE, or at least in Arduino Labs. And that's great because, frankly, a lot of people are comfortable with Arduino, and this makes it easier for them to experience Python on a microcontroller. And admittedly, some of the documentation might be a little bit harder to find than in CircuitPython because there's, you know, paid people, I believe, at CircuitPython that like make sure these libraries are up to date and easily accessible and organized. Whereas again, like sometimes you'll find documentation from 7 years ago or 6 years ago or something that like is documenting a library you need to use today, and it's been updated like tons of times since then, but the documentation still works for some reason. So it's scary sometimes, and that's sometimes why I don't always recommend Micropython to people. But the fact that Arduino IDE has decided this is worth implementing, I actually have it up here. This is Arduino Lab for Micropython. You flash Micropython to your device, and then you're able to click on connect. It'll connect to it. You can save it to the device. In my opinion, this is a really easy way of getting started with Micropython. So if you want to try it out, if you've been interested in it, it does have a lot of really great support for many different devices, some of which also don't run CircuitPython. So if you've been wanting to try out Python on microcontrollers, again, the documentation I feel like could be a little bit better sometimes, but it does work quite well, and there's a lot of resources for getting started. And now you don't need to walk outside of the Arduino ecosystem in order to get the benefit of working with Python on microcontrollers. So really cool. Definitely recommend you check it out. And this is not my code. This is demo code. But now it's my code.
Nice.
Yeah, so really easy to get started with Python on microcontrollers if you haven't already tried it. I myself find it the best way of doing a lot of these prototypes that you just want to do, you know, fast. Nice. And then I think I've got one more. Oh yeah, if you are on Twitter, I have not been personally able to download my Twitter archive. So if you're somebody that spends a lot of time on Twitter, you want to archive your tweets, your interactions, that sort of stuff, good luck. It looks like most people are not able to download their archive. So if it's possible for you to try requesting it, maybe it comes out at some point, but the likelihood that it ends up not being retrievable seems to be increasing every day. And then, yeah, that's everything I have for my Twitter update and for our little flipping out special. we can go back to you, Michael.
Yes, you are hearing the original Nugget in the background. He is being very
screaming.
beggy.
Okay, so just so you know what's happening and you don't think that our cat is being tortured, the torture he's enduring right now is one door in the entire house is closed.
Yes.
And he's demanding an explanation as to why he's not allowed in that room. And he's extremely upset that he can't conduct an inspection on his own timeline. So
yes, the Flipper has arrived. We did an unboxing at the beginning of the episode. So if you want to scroll back, you can watch that. And then in regards to the SDR question, I would go towards the Atom Pluto SDR. I think the Lime SDR has been around longer, but I see more projects and support for the Atom Pluto. Okay. Let me switch over to my screen.
Let's do it.
Sorry. Running the stream and everything is fun. So if you own an Android phone, in particular a Pixel 6 or a Pixel 5, then you absolutely need to download the latest security update. Researcher David Schultz basically accidentally stumbled on a lock screen bypass. So obviously you're going to need to have physical access to the Android device to bypass the lock screen, but it sounds pretty straightforward in what happens. He's got a bit of a video demo here. It's probably longer than I can play the entire thing, but essentially you can take out, restart the Android phone, take out the SD card or the SIM card, and there's a unique identifier number on there. And then you can put it back in and put in that personal identifier number for the SIM card. And there's a bug where it goes through this lock screen, but it does it twice. So it bypasses the next lock screen, which is usually putting in your PIN to unlock your phone. So it's pretty interesting. And, you know, maybe not the most severe in terms of, oh, a hacker's going to come hack my phone. But for people that might be in an environment where, you know, they have an abusive spouse or a stalker or something like that, it is a definite legitimate concern. So luckily there is a patch for this. Google took a little while to get the patch out.
I was just looking for my Pixel because you said this works on a Pixel 6?
Yeah.
Oh, I have one. Okay. Well,
yeah, I have a Pixel 5, so it works on both of our phones.
Yeah, fortunately. It's right here.
This is what I get for converting everyone to a Pixel in the house.
Yeah. All right. Well.
But yeah, so that's all for that piece. Do you have?
Oh yeah, I got tons of stuff. So all right, over on my screen, we talked a little bit about the way that people find malicious links last week. So we were talking about SEO poisoning. So SEO poisoning is when a bunch of websites that have vulnerabilities or have been infected are all redirected to point at fake or scam websites that have just been put up but need a bunch of link authority in order to actually show up in a search and trick people. So the platforms that those sorts of websites are on are often the most vulnerable part because you can just take down the URL or whatever, and then you disable this attack. So threat actors have been starting to abuse a service that I'd never heard of called Google Looker Studio.
That sounds
formerly Google Data Studio. So I don't know who joined the product team and named it Google Looker Studio, but it has basically been serving up an SEO poisoning attack by doing some of the most primitive methods that you've probably seen if you've ever gone to like the last page of like search results, and it's just websites that just have tons of just words all over them like this, where it's just like trying to get as many people to find these like search results as possible and then go through a series of links to go to the actual malicious content. So in this case, like by directing all the traffic to a Google, they're still calling it Google Data Studio. I would too, honestly, but a Google Looker Studio website. These are designed to expose basic data or like make presentations and that sort of thing. But instead, you'll see that datastudio.google.com has pretty good link authority and usually is not seen as a fraudulent website because it's like, it's a Google service. So Google tends to, when people search for these terms, highly prioritize some of these scam websites that use these keyword stuffing techniques to just cram a bunch of keywords into something that ultimately redirects to something a bit more sketchy. So what it redirects to varies, but it can be anything from scam websites to tort websites to things that will just download malicious programs and then pay somebody else or have somebody else to pay to just infect your computer with whatever it is, they got that they want to distribute. So these are a new and interesting twist on some of the SEO poisoning attacks we've seen in the past, because they use Google's internal architecture to stage these attacks and then redirect the rest of the attack elsewhere. Really smart.
Okay. Give me a second here.
Oh no, I've got another
Oh,
one.
you got another
Oh yeah.
one. Okay.
So also,
roll.
we talk a lot about ransomware and whether or not it's a good idea to pay. And ultimately, it might be more affordable for the company to decide to pay the ransomware operators, and they might decide to do that. And a lot of the problem is they don't often come forward and say exactly how much they paid, because they perceive they could get in trouble, or the FBI might not like that. But the FBI has made a lot of progress towards convincing people to talk about how much money they've actually spent on ransoms. And it looks like the Hive Ransomeware group, which is affiliated with the Conti Ransomware group, and share a lot of commonalities, has made about $100 million from over 1,000 companies since just June of 2021. So again, like, this is also probably an underreporting, because there's a lot of people who are not going to walk in front of their shareholders and talk about the millions of dollars they've just spent on a ransomware attack. Like, often this will be try to handle it quietly, or engage an outside party to manage the transaction and make it not as much of a an impactful thing. But it just goes to show the scale of how much money is actually made by these threat actors when it comes to these kind of highly structured business-like organizations that have operators who use the software and do the actual ransoms, and then the people who created it who sit at the top and earn money from people who act as affiliates.
Okay. Over on my screen, we have a news piece about extortion. So, Cody, how would you respond if you got an email claiming that it had breached your, your database, was going to leak all your data, and basically smear your company's name?
I would say, oh no, you attacked my website. My link tree is down. Oh no, however will I recover all the links that I had on it that linked out to other services? That's what I would say personally. But I would probably say, like, maybe don't do that. Like, it would be unhelpful for me.
Yeah. Okay. Well, you see, that's what's going around right now. It's basically this email, and it's targeting basically everyone, like, with no discrimination, just blanketing every email they got, claiming that they've breached the person's website, and if they don't want the data leaked, they need to pay $2,500 in Bitcoin.
Well, my next question is, let me see what you got.
Yeah, no, exactly. So this is completely a scam. And it should just be put in junk mail if you ever get it. The email looks like this. But yeah, that's like, touches on a very important topic of how, like, these hackers can sometimes make claims that are absolutely untrue and unfounded. So sometimes, obviously you don't want them to have actually breached it and then start leaking the data. But at the same time, you might want to request proof sometimes that they do in fact have what they say they have. And Bleeping Computer was able to trace down 2 Bitcoin wallets associated with this scam, and it does look like someone has unfortunately paid the scam, and that's really sad. But that's what the hackers, or the scammer in this case, is doing, is playing a statistical game. If they email enough people, then someone's just gonna have the money and think it's better to just pay the Bitcoin ransom.
Leo from the chat also mentions the fake breach email could also probably use passwords from, like, the old LinkedIn hack, or like other things that, like, would allow you to get an old password associated with that email address and make it seem as though you already have more information than you already do. So a little bit of OSINT, or a little bit of just like automation when it comes to creating those ransom emails or those threats, like, would really go a long way towards convincing the average person you already got in, or you already know something about their business.
Yeah, I would say, like, the things like Have I Been Pwned database and stuff like finding these breached passwords and OSINT information, you could definitely make a much more convincing email. And this is a good reminder. There is the bitcoinabuse.com. So if you're ever suspicious about one of these wallet addresses or something, you can put it in here, and it'll tell you a little more information about the sort of activity going on with that wallet and whether or not it's been flagged for hacking and scamming purposes. In further news, everyone's favorite Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, they've all been suspended. We don't have to deal with them anymore. Oh, wait, that's in Turkey. So if you're in Turkey the past day, you haven't been able to access a lot of those social media platforms. Now, that's in regards to a terrorist attack that took place yesterday. And it seems that the government did not want citizens to be concerned or informed. I'm not
to spread information.
To spread information, whatever. They did not want information about this attack going out more. So, what's the bureau's name? There's yes, the Turkey's Radio and Television Supreme Council basically went out to all the internet service providers and forced them to ban the IP addresses associated with these predominant social media platforms. It does seem like those are coming back online today, but looking at worldwide internet trends, you can definitely tell that a lot of people lost access to those social medias for a short period of time. And this comes on the heels of a law that was passed in Turkey a few months ago. I forget the exact time frame, but essentially it says that any reporter or person reported to be spreading false information can be imprisoned for up to 3 years, which seems a little harsh, but ultimately that law did pass. So, that's what they'll have to work with.
Yikes. So from our audience, a question and then a response. How would you encourage a small business who doesn't have a dedicated IT person to take cybersecurity seriously? And then the response, that's the best part. You don't. In my experience, that's been true. If you have a small business and they don't have a dedicated IT person, they don't care. They just want to survive. Like if it's something that's absolutely going to clobber them tomorrow and you can prove that, they might act on it. But I remember working at a business that was operating radios that were on the same frequency as first responders. And it was going to cost them $100 per radio in order to get a license to officially operate a radio on the correct frequencies. This was going to cost them maybe $800, $900 in order to get the whole thing set up. And this was a business that made like $100,000 on the bar some nights. But when it comes to operating their radios, they were willing to risk a $10,000 fine per radio if they were discovered. And their solution to this dilemma was to not use the radios when ambulances or police would go by. So there's all sorts of stupid cost-cutting measures that small or medium-sized businesses will do in spite of very clear consequences. And even if there's a clear roadmap to being in the clear and being safe, oftentimes it's not as important to them as making a profit. And that's just a lot easier to convince larger businesses of when they have the budget to take care of this sort of thing. And also it's absolutely, they understand it's not in their best interest to expose themselves to any threats that are happening to other people,
To add on to that, I would say there are best practices you can follow without having an IT person. Like on any account, you have enabling two-factor authentication and using a two-factor app as opposed to SMS two-factor verification, using a strong password and password manager, just some basic common sense stuff like that will make you not the lowest hanging fruit. And honestly, a lot of hackers are going for the lowest hanging fruit unless they have something specifically they want to target about your company. So yeah, you can get like 80% of the security with like 20% of the effort.
You're not going to get them to do it though.
That's true.
Just most of the time, it's just they just don't care. Business people don't like thinking about spending money on things that don't have a return. Like insurance hurts them to pay for it, but they understand it,
Yeah.
So like selling it as insurance is like really the best way to get them to understand it, because frankly, there's nothing else in business that you spend money on that doesn't have an immediate return that's worth keeping, except cybersecurity, when it comes to some of these very specific areas where it'll literally just ruin your business if something happens. So
yeah,
it's tough. It's really hard. All right, shall we go on to another topic?
Yes. I'm gonna switch to your screen.
Sure. So this one's a confusing story and further evidence that gamers are, of course, the most targeted of all individuals. So WrapperBot malware has been updated to begin targeting game servers with denial of service attacks. So this is kind of a timeline of the way that this particular botnet has grown. And it looks like it was originally kind of affiliated with the Mirai botnet. So that has been around forever and grew into an incredibly powerful IoT-based botnet that now is beginning to develop new capabilities in some of its iterations, such as WrapperBot. So it looks like it has gained the ability to do things like SSH brute forcing, which is interesting because it's able to get the headers for any device that it tries to connect to and try to identify what model of device it is and what default passwords that sort of device usually has. So by cutting down on the amount of brute forcing it needs to do, it's able to use a smaller list of brute force passwords. And it's also able to do a lot of this much more quietly than previous versions have required. So this botnet has got a lot smarter and a lot better at spreading between IoT devices. And that's really primarily like what this botnet is made up of. Lots and lots of IoT devices that have Telnet and SSH left open with default passwords. So when researchers lifted the lid on this and they took a look inside, they could see that there were a variety of different functions that were built into the Telnet brute forcer to do simple things like performing a denial of service attack, keep alive, do nothing, shut down the client, or stop certain attacks. But recently it's been optimized to be able to break into adjoining devices on the same network, be able to scan the internet for other vulnerable devices and attack them. And then once it's done that, optimize itself for what was it? Sorry, Grand Theft Auto San Andreas multiplayer. That is what this botnet is specifically tuned to attack. Its natural prey is Grand Theft Auto San Andreas multiplayer servers. So of all the targeted gamers, it appears that Grand Theft Auto San Andreas multiplayer players are perhaps the most targeted by a giant automated network of hostile computers trying to crash and slow down their games. So again, I don't know the motivations behind this. Maybe there's a lot more money being made in San Andreas multiplayer servers than I'm aware of. But either way, it's kind of a strange play to create a giant machine army and then sick it against, again, Grand Theft Auto server instances. So interesting piece of malicious software that like can propagate itself in very interesting ways, but its end goal of just attacking like some gamers, again, a mystery to me.
Yeah. Okay. So in this week's edition of Don't Claim to Have Defeated the Hackers Before You've Actually Defeated the Hackers, a Russian scooter company, Whoosh, which might I say is a great name for a scooter company.
It does make sense. I'll agree on that.
So they have had a data breach affecting 7.2 million users' data records. And this comes on the heels of an announcement a couple of weeks ago that they had suffered an attack, but had successfully thwarted the hackers. It appears that they have not, in fact, thwarted the hackers, as a hacker has appeared on a data forum for hackers and is selling this data. And for 1.9 million of the users, it includes their credit card and bank card information.
Is that Queensblade? Oh, sorry.
I
thought it was a game I know.
I don't do the weeb stuff.
All right.
You know. But anyway, also what's really interesting here too is 3 million promo codes got breached in this data attack or database breach. And reportedly, those promo codes could still be used to unlock the scooters and get free rides, which seems bizarre to me that the Whoosh wouldn't just like know that those had been breached and then just disabled it. I don't know. Maybe it's beyond me. But yeah, it's just an interesting thing. And I think a good lesson learned to be very careful when you make bold statements about defeating hackers. You know, arguably they did do the right move and announce that they had an attack, but nevertheless. And moving on, there have been 42,000 sites used to trap users in brand impersonation schemes. And it's really crazy here. This attack is basically generating 300 new websites a day and using common things like Namecheap and GoDaddy to host these websites, and then impersonating common brands. Examples include Coca-Cola, McDonald's, Emirates, Shopee, and other brands. But yeah, basically like they're using like ad redirects, and then once you go to this website, they're having you do various monetization schemes, such as installing a app. If I can find it here, there's an app in the Google Play Store that you download more free RAM, because that's everyone's favorite thing, is a little more free RAM for their computers. But yeah, so you know, it's just a reminder to be on the lookout, especially when you're clicking ads or going to these websites. and have a healthy dose of suspicion when deals sound too good to be true.
All right, so over on my screen, we have a massive surge of attacks against Magneto websites. So this is like a service that a lot of people can use to stand up websites, often e-commerce websites, and it's really, really popular. A lot of people use them, but there's some vulnerabilities that have only recently had patches come out that have not been widely applied, and it looks like as much as 40% of Magneto 2 websites are being targeted by these very, very easy to use exploits that are now being sold online for a fraction of the cost that they used to be sold. So really, the surge here is not a new vulnerability that's suddenly come out. It is a proof of concept that is so easy to use that very low-skilled hackers can use it to gain a foothold. And this has actually created a situation where hackers are fighting over the available malicious hosts and kicking each other out of the system by lightly modifying the proof of concepts that are out there. So this is interesting because the attack can be used to capture credit card information. And because these stores are overwhelmingly e-commerce stores, and we're about to go into a very busy shopping season, or I guess we'll see, this is a very juicy target for scammers who want to gather as many credit cards as possible. So how does this attack work? Well, in order to execute this attack, the attackers will create an account on a website that is vulnerable, and then place an order that has this code here. Once it has been injected into the order system, they don't need to pay it, but it does have a specific JavaScript exploit here that allows them to take over control of the website, establish a backdoor, and start doing all sorts of other things like filtering credit card information, redirecting it, or using it as part of a botnet if they wanted to. So yeah, often this will also not be caught by built-in security tools that are looking for this sort of thing, because Magneto's not scanning for this sort of thing in your orders, and that's where this breach can initially happen. So if you run a Magneto website, you need to look at your orders and see if there's any crazy strings like this and like the ship to name or any of these other variables, because that is how this malicious campaign is actually being propagated. So in incredibly unexciting news, Google is rolling out Privacy Sandbox on Android 13 starting in early 2023. So what does this mean? That sounds good, right? Well, basically, Google has decided that they're the only ones that should be able to do advertising, like targeted advertising to you, and that they should obfuscate your identity to other advertisers, but have kind of their own system for figuring out exactly what you're doing and then selling that information to advertisers. So the way that this ends up working is that Privacy Sandbox works to restrict other trackers from tracking you, and instead does on-device calculations about your interests, and then negotiates with like an automated like bidding service to have advertisers serve you content based on your interest. So the difference is it's supposed to stay on the device, and negotiation happens with their servers, and that way all the information that they're creepily tracking about you lives on your device and is processed there, and isn't processed in their like cloud service or whatever. But not a lot of people are very excited about this. So this is the process. Like they create an audience, and then like your app like will figure out that yes, you do like this sort of content, make some sort of negotiation with their server, and then serve you an ad. And this is supposed to cut other advertisers out of the picture. But frankly, not a lot of people are excited about this. Particularly DuckDuckGo has criticized Privacy Sandbox as a pretentious system that merely introduces new names for what is essentially indirect user tracking, which is exactly how I would describe this. In related news, DuckDuckGo has now decided to release a tracker blocker in their apps that allows you to basically kind of like connects like a VPN and will disable any service that is associated with trackers. I'm assuming including Google's new stupid Privacy Sandbox. So kind of seems like these two things are related pieces of news based on the quote from DuckDuckGo here that says that this is like not actually good for user privacy. And I would agree. It seems like they've just offloaded the creepy tracking part to your phone. So now your phone just creepily tracks you instead of their servers exchanging data with your phone. So rather than exporting the data to their servers to be analyzed, they've now managed to make your phone hot and use your electricity to do it on the device in order to serve you ads, which again is not really that great for users in my opinion. So not a particularly exciting update on the Google front, but the DuckDuckGo update does sound really cool. And like they have some of these concerns and limitations with what Google is offering in mind.
And unfortunately, we have just run out of time.
Yeah, so if you have any burning questions about the news stream, if you have any questions you want us to answer, or if you have any suggestions on what we should cover next on this FlipperZero, I think we're probably going to do like an introductory video on Hack5 at some point, just getting started with it and stuff. But if you have any of the specific features you want us to explore or any interesting research that's been done on it, please reach out to us in the comments because we would love to hear it. And yeah, as always, a big shout out to Varonis for letting us host the stream every week. If you want to check out some of their awesome webinars and other free resources, this isn't the only free thing that they put out. There's a lot of other great resources out there for free, and you should feel free to check it out. So we will see you next on our Wednesday stream, correct?
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, it might be a little early because of Thanksgiving.
Right? But we will see you guys on Wednesday on our Hack5 Q&A stream, and we'll talk to you later. Bye.